In order to curtail the pressure on the external sector due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, policymakers introduced import control measures from April 2020 onward. As such, we saw 13 extraordinary gazettes to amend the regulation of the Imports and Exports Control Act No. 1 of 1961 being published since April 2020. In this video, we would like to discuss a few business tips for the trade to consider in adapting to these changing trade regulations. It is evident that the overnight implementation of restrictions on imports and exports is detrimental to traders. Imports or exports is not limited to a few days, but revolves around building proper supply chains. It takes years of long planning, and a shipment is just a single activity in the entire supply chain. In this context, it is important that the trade looks at these challenges with innovative thinking. Let us analyze a few important areas that are part of this supply chain cycle. If there is a regulation change, it is important to look at the order book in hand to find out whether the changes will have an impact on your delivery. If so, immediately share with business supply chain networks to keep your suppliers alerted about the possible disruptions. Start a conversation on the existing contracts and change the delivery patterns, mode of transport, and payment methods as appropriate. While looking at the order that is on the way, also look at the pipeline of orders with regards to quantities, values, and lead times to arrive in the country. Take immediate steps either to hold at origin or to divert shipments on the water for transshipment in order to divert to different destinations. In a worst-case scenario, start lobbying with a bona fide case with authorities for clearance of a cargo or reshipping to the origin. This is a short-term activity, but nevertheless worth trying. However, the intention here is to quickly have the goods in the country within a clearance window before any sudden restrictions. This is more of a medium to long-term goal for your business teams to look at alternative sourcing opportunities for raw materials. You can do this through research and using existing supply network. While this sounds like a long-term goal, if used strategically, it could be a low-hanging fruit. This is another factor to consider, but it would depend on the type of raw material. As import restrictions are likely to persist for some of the items, it would be better to develop few local suppliers with a proper understanding on quality and contracts. This may sound easy, but is costly when trying to implement it, as it ties up your working capital. You have to also consider how the inputs relate to your final product. It is purely a commercial decision after looking at the number and different scenarios. Now, these are just a handful of tips that the trade can use at any point in a company's sourcing strategy in adapting to the changing environment. Considering the above, it is critical that businesses build agile supply chains with multiple local and multi-origin sources.